MLS Roundup. All right, Brooks.
If you want a league that's really cool and in the U.S., it's MLS Roundup. Born in the USA.
There will be a soundtrack to today's show available. I don't know where. All right, Brooks. What's going on in the MLS? Give us the weekly roundup. How's the league going? We did say earlier that games are only some of the teams have 9 games left, right?
Yeah, I mean
it's not very many. So
coming to a close. I mean, it's some teams may have 10 games in hand now. Some have 9, 11. There's a couple of variants just depending on games were rescheduled for Open Cup reasons or weather delays and such like that. But no, the season's coming to an end, and it's crunch time. It's crunch time for a lot of those. For a lot of the teams, especially in the Eastern Conference, everything's really close in the Eastern Conference right now.
Why don't we pull up the league table here? As I got to get rid of the EPL one, and then we'll bring up the MLS table. Yeah. All right, what do we got, Brooks?
So I mean, listen, for me, you look at the Eastern Conference table, and I mean, you have Philly and Montreal. I mean, you have the top 4 there: Philly, Montreal, NYCFC, and New York Red Bull.
Pretty much all set in place there, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Orlando, maybe they can catch them. I don't know if Miami, Columbus has had up and downs a little bit. So, so the Eastern Conference, I think, is very so much up for grabs, though, because you see, 8-9, New England and Cincy at 34 points, Charlotte at 32. Does TFC make a run with Insigne and some other additions? I mean, listen, they were in the 13 to 14 area. Now they've jumped up, and everyone's close there. So it only takes a swing of a couple games.
It takes a couple wins, but they have not been playing well. But now they have Insigne there. It could actually help. I know he scored last night or the other night. He did very well. I got to say, I think we mentioned it last week. Again, Inter Miami at number 5.
Yes.
You and I, at the beginning of the season, thought, well, shit, they might not win any games. This could be a disaster of a season. Phil Neville could be in real trouble with them.
Exactly.
And now they're in 5th.
I know. So I highlighted 3 teams this week I want to talk about.
Oh, did I just snip you there? All right.
It's one of them.
Good.
So Inter Miami, all right? So from their last 5, so top 7 in the East, last 5 matches, they've had 11 points in the last 5 matches, beating NYFC, TFC, and San Jose. Okay, so we're not going to... San Jose is at the bottom of the Western Conference. TFC is still trying to figure things out. But that's not a bad win considering the additions they've made recently. Beating NYCFC, they've had some injuries. They're not the same as since they've sold Castellanos. But, I mean, listen, tying Montreal and FC Cincy, 2 good ties to keep them in everything. Just to think about it, though, you think the first, 16 or so games from February to June, I mean, they were 21 points. So it's funny. I thought they were actually doing worse than they actually were, just because maybe I wasn't paying as close attention to them as I was to some other teams in the beginning of the season. But, I mean, listen, 21 points from there, and then you get 15 points from the 4th to August 20th there. So it's been good. I mean, February, August schedule. I mean, they've beaten some teams in playoff contention right now. New England, Minnesota, New York City, NYRB, and then they've beaten the teams that they need to beat: the Seattles, the Atlantas, the Portlands, San Jose, Charlotte, TFC, and no one expected Seattle and Portland, honestly, and Atlanta maybe too to be towards the bottom of the conference tables.
Right.
So beating those teams. Doesn't matter where they're placed in the league standings or in the conference standings. Wins against those teams are always very good because Seattle and Portland are always tough, and same with Atlanta. So, props to Inter Miami for figuring things out, and obviously this year with the I don't know what do you want to call the violations.
The points,
they had.
Points deduction or something like that.
It wasn't points deduction, so they deducted how much money they can spend.
Oh,
on
that's
players.
right. It was how much they could spend on the salaries.
So they didn't have much salary to spend on this year, and they had to get rid of guys because they had too many DPs. And funny, Pellegrini, who they had to get rid of, who was their 4th DP, is just now signing with NYCFC.
Right.
So, there you go. But so I mean, kudos to them. I mean, 10 wins. 10 losses and 6 draws. You're tied with Orlando for 5th right now. That's not bad.
I mean, that's way ahead of where we thought they were going to be.
Yeah.
Way ahead of where they thought they were going to be.
Yeah. So my second team I'd like to highlight here is the Montreal Impact. So we talked about them a lot last year at the end of the year.
Yep.
Playoff team right in the edge. I think they just missed it last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So, Montreal, 46 points in 26 games. So that's top 5 in the East right now. 13 wins, 2 against FC Cincy, who are still in there in the 8 and 9 spot, could make the playoffs. NYRB looks like they're going to make the playoffs. Vancouver is on the line in the Western Conference, a team that, I'm surprised if we're talking about all the Canadian teams, you think they'd be maybe down towards the Western Conference, but they've shown very well with their new head coach. Beating Atlanta, Orlando, Charlotte twice, TFC, DC United, beating Columbus, Houston, New England. So they've had some good wins, and they've had some good wins against good teams. And then don't forget, also, when they started the season off, they were in CONCACAF Champions League.
That's right.
There was a big focus on advancing in CONCACAF Champions League, and they started the season off 0-3-1 in the first month of February and April, or February or March. Yeah,
they started off terrible.
It wasn't good, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? Because they're playing well in Champions League, but they can't find a win in MLS. And that happens sometimes when you're playing in those two competitions.
Correct.
So, but if we look at the stats, just kind of league-wide stats for Montreal, so for goals amongst all teams, so LAFC number 1 at 55, and by the way, they have clinched a playoff spot right now. They're far ahead in the Western Conference at the 1 spot. So it looks like they might win the Supporters' Shield, depending on what Philadelphia Union do.
Yep.
So anyways, total goals for MLS teams. LAFC 55. Austin tied with them at 55, which one heck of a season they've had, because they were at the bottom of the Western Conference last year. Philadelphia Union 51. Oh, and Montreal 47.
Wow.
Goals, assist. Austin 57. Philadelphia 54. Montreal 50. FC Cincy 49. Goals inside the 18, which I think is a very valuable stat for me, honestly, is because obviously if you're getting penetrated behind the back line, and you can find gaps and whip in balls, especially with guys like Kai Kamara, who was pretty much almost done with his career. And found it playing with Sierra Leone, and then Montreal wanted to sign him, and what a pickup he's been for them coming off the bench or filling in when they need to. Romeo Kyoto has been great, 14 goals and 4 assists in 24 games this year. Kai Kamara, 5 goals and 5 assists in 25 games. And then Georgi Mihailovic, the young U.S. domestic who's being linked to some European moves right now, 7 goals and 4 assists in 20 games played. So anyways, back to the goals inside the 18, though.
Love that stat, by the way. Absolutely love the stat, and you're highlighting that. That's excellent. Go ahead.
LAFC, 48 goals inside the 18. Austin, 48. Montreal, 46. Philadelphia, 46. So they're right up there with all the top teams in both conferences. So Montreal and Wilfried Nancy has done one hell of a job keeping Montreal together after that rough start, and then bringing in players. And if you look at the mixture of the team, it's very European, it's very Canadian, French, they have domestics. So he's got a lot of guys, little Spaniards, a little bit of everything. So he's done a good job of mixing players in that. So they have done extremely well. And I think they will be a very interesting team to watch
once they get into
playoffs.
I'm really interested to know who your third team that you're about to highlight is. And I'm wondering, it might not be, but I'm wondering if it could be one of the 2 Texas teams who has, we were talking last year at the end of the season, all 3 Texas teams were in trouble and they were terrible.
They're all at the bottom of the Western
Conference. And if there was any relegation in MLS, they would have been gone.
Yes.
But 2 of those teams have really broke out. And as we see, Austin FC and FC Dallas is 2nd and 3rd, respectively, in the Western Conference. Now, those might not be the teams you were going to be highlighting, but that stands out to me. All right, tell us, who's your third team that you want to highlight?
It is FC Dallas.
Yeah, well, look at me.
It is.
Look at me guessing that. We did not have this conversation pre-recording here, so just picking up on what you're laying down and looking at the table. All right, go ahead and give it to us. What is up with FC Dallas? In third position in the league right now, in the Western Conference, sorry.
Well, besides losing 4-0 to Nashville, so let's Nashville's tough. You're playing in Nashville, so that's not easy.
Yep.
But FC Dallas, 42 points in 26 So what? 28 games played now.
Yeah, FC Dallas have played 27 games efficiently,
okay.
And have 42 points, plus 11 goal difference. Big difference than last, last year.
Huge. So 11 wins this year against. So they beat Nashville early in the season, beating Portland, which they've always had a good run against Portland. Beating Colorado, Houston. You need to beat the teams inside your state. Seattle, LA Galaxy twice, who've been better this year.
Yep.
Orlando has been better. RSL have been finding their way. San Jose and Philadelphia. So beating the teams you need to, plus some top-tier teams. Okay? So then statistically, so for them, and they're not as high in the categories, but they're up there, but they've done a very good job not conceding a lot of goals. So 7 goals have come outside the 18 for them. That's tied for 5th in MLS. And then 32 of their 39 goals have come from inside the 18. That's tied for 9th in MLS. So they've done a good job as well with Jesus Ferreira getting inside the box, with Areola and all the other front players to get inside the box to finish and convert. Okay? So back to some of the players. Jesus Ferreira. What a season he's having. 15 goals and 5 assists in 27 games played. For goals, that's 2nd overall in MLS. So that's pretty good. And then we're going to talk about him a little later on our national team segments.
We're kind of running out of time here, so we may have to push that to next week. We may have to push that to next week because I want to get another segment in.
I'm almost done though.
But let's finish up the MLS roundup because I'm sorry, it is super interesting, but we will possibly push the U.S. men's national team forward debate to next week. I know Nate is very interested in that, and I don't know, he's running out of energy. Anyway, sorry. Back to let's finish up the MLS roundup. Sorry, bro.
So Paul Areola, 9 goals and 4 assists in 26 games played. So what a pickup he's been for them, getting him from DC United. He has added a lot to that offensive attack, which they lacked a lot of. Last year they just couldn't score goals. They didn't show up. And then Alan Velasco, the DP international they brought over last year. 4 goals and 6 assists, 22 games. He's been very effective. The stats don't show it, but he's changed the game a little bit. And then also now adding Sebastian Lletget, and then having, hopefully, if he can come back and stay healthy, and is Paxton Pomykal, who was probably one of the youngest and brightest, American players we had for a while until he had a hip injury. Right. So those are the 3 teams I highlight, and then we have a few games I have for this week coming up that I'm going to highlight as well.
Go ahead and give us the 3 games you advise us all to watch for the MLS this week. Go ahead, buddy.
All right, Friday, August 26th, Portland versus Seattle, 10 p.m.
Ooh,
on ESPN.
Northwestern battle there, right?
Yeah,
like teams
Cascadia rivalry.
Ooh, that's it. That's the words I was looking for.
I actually was at one of those.
You enjoyed it, right?
I loved it.
Oh man, that had to. That's awesome like bucket list item right there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was a great.
All right, that's a good one. What else we got?
That was probably the best one of the week. So the second one I thought was interesting was FC Dallas versus RSL, 9 p.m. on ESPN Plus on Saturday.
Okay, that's a good one.
So why is it interesting?
I think because you see those teams competing. RSL is 5th, and then you have FC Dallas at 3rd. So RSL 38 points, Dallas at 42. So close in the standings matchup. Okay. So RSL doing a pretty good job.
Makes sense.
Pablo Mastroeni.
That makes sense.
And the last one for me, and these 2 teams are at the top of the Eastern Conference, giving Miami some love after I kind of talked poorly about them at the beginning of the season. 27th on Saturday of August. NYRB versus Inter Miami, 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus.
Is that one in Miami? Because I want to go to it. I don't. My wife will not let me do that, but that's okay. I still want to go there. Yeah, it's in New York. Yeah. It's closer. Still can't get to it.
Yes. So, those are my 3.
The great games to look forward to this week. Again, the MLS is coming to a close. They got about 9 to 10 games left, depending on the team. And as we just saw from the table, any of those teams can move up or down. I really want to see Nashville put it together and cement a playoff place. I think they need to get into the playoffs, and they need to prove a point because they have that brand new stadium this year.
Yes. Sitting at 6th, 36 points.
And
that was a big win tonight.
They need to put a few wins together there. Yeah. All right.